Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, here with Benji Naesen. As always, for the Israel Startup Nation 2022 preview, we'll have the recap of 2021, transfers, select their teams for all the major races next year, talk about are they at risk of relegation from World Tour at the end of 2022, little known thing that's not really being spoken about, as well as our hot takes for their 2022 season. How you going, Benji? Did you have a good Christmas?
Yes, I had a perfect Christmas.
All
And
right, that's enough.
okay.
No, I'm kidding. What else happened? Do you get any good presents? Do you do presents? Does Belgium celebrate on the 24th?
I received an electric toothbrush, so I'm not sure if that's like a sign of people saying, "Oh,
Oh,
your face looks like shit," or. But I could use it, so that's great.
YouTube is just balling out now. I'm still stuck with that gag. Anyway, on to Israel Startup Nation. But before we do that, mention our show partner, Lacole, who produce performance cycling apparel based in the UK, expanding quickly internationally, now sponsoring Bora Hansgrohe back in the World Tour next year, as well as ambassadors Cancellara, Wiggins, and Johan Museo, who I think Benji says he sees occasionally on rides in the Lacole kit. But if you want to check them out, they're at www.lacole.cc. They've been supporting the show since its inception last year. That's www.lacole.cc. Compared to their budget, again, just relative to their budget, so they had a similar looking year, Benji, I would say, to Intermarché in terms of results, even less Grand Tour wins, but the budgets are very different here. We have Sylvan Adams, the owner of the team, very wealthy, and we don't know the exact figures, but it's a healthy, maybe above mid-pack budget. Even Vorters was saying, the EF manager, that Froome's salary is nearly the entire salary of his EF team. I think maybe that's a bit hyperbolic, but he's probably not far from the truth. And so that's why we have to judge them a little bit differently, because it's about according to maybe L'Equipe or someone, 18 million sort of range. So Benji, 3 World Tour wins, 1 at a Grand Tour, Dan Martin Giro Stage 17, which was delightful. That was back in May. And then after that, no World Tour wins, just 3 Pro wins, being Herman's at Arctic Race, GC and a stage. The GC was a bit lucky, and Trevelle Vaticine. And yeah, other than that, Benji, just Woods was consistent, a couple of top 10s in Liège and Lombardia, and they had top 10s in Roubaix, which was actually really good with Van Asbrook and Bovin, but still for the budget, not what they would have hoped for.
Yes, certainly. And I think, like we mentioned, Froome is a big part of that. But for the rest of the team, I feel like they misused some of their riders in the wrong races and so forth. And as a consequence, came out with less victories than they could have. Because a perfect example for that is Dan Martin and Michael Woods. The entire year we've been saying that Michael Woods going to the Tour for GC was not a great idea in the first place. Now, he accidentally fell out of that GC position and, well, quite literally fell, which is unfortunate, but ended up having to go for the KOM and so forth then, and wasn't strong enough to do so because the competition is high in the Tour de France to get that. But I bet if you send him to the Giro, he can definitely get a stage win, and if you send him to the Vuelta as well, and I think that's a missed chance on their end.
Exactly. Sending Woods and Martin to the same race is just doesn't make sense to me. And they also, Benji, there was pressure, it seemed, definitely in the case of Mike Woods. Mike Woods gave an interview before the Tour de France because we were criticising him. Or maybe I was criticising him somewhere. I was like, come on, why is he going for GC? His TT's awful. This is silly from Mike Woods. And then Mike Woods gave an interview where he's like, I don't even really want to go for GC at the Tour. It's just, he implied that the team was like, you have to go for GC. And then he fell out of it, be it through crashes or whatever, went for polka dots, didn't get polka dots and didn't get a stage either. But Dan Martin, as well as the Giro, we were very critical of him. He spent 10 days going for GC before the Montalcino stage. All the while, people like Victor Lefay are winning stages on a 3 kilometre, 7% finish, where Dan Martin would probably could do it in, he could do it on a bike with no gears. I don't know. I was trying to say Denmark could beat Lefay easily. He could have. And then he just didn't want to take the risks on the descent. Fell out. Eventually came 10th in GC. Got the stage win, which was good, but it could have been more. And then at the Vuelta, the biggest issue I have, Benji, is the Vuelta. Their Vuelta team they sent was awful. They have no Woods or Dan Martin, despite both being very, very good at the Vuelta.
Yes.
Dan Martin last year, did he beat Roglic in an uphill finish? I believe he did.
Yes, a stage win by Martin, and I think the first week already.
And Woods won 2 stages, or at least 1 stage ahead of Valverde in a break. It perfectly suits them. They didn't send them, either of them. Maybe, okay, you don't have to send both, but yeah, then they sent a sort of second-tier sprint squad with Chimolai, and it was just not great for their Vuelta either. So
yeah, and then you look at, for example, the entire year of Woods, and you see that he rides the Tour de France and then the Olympics, and then there's like a 1 month break before he does the Tour of Britain and 3 Italian classics, which certainly fits him, the Italian classics. But if you replace the Tour by the Vuelta, you're going to have a very consistent season by this man where he will likely get those stage wins in the Tour and the Vuelta. So, yeah, you're right. I agree with that. That's an issue. And I think that's one of the bigger issues of this team is the planning and team management of which riders go to which team. And that has influenced their outcome of the season, certainly with those 2 riders. And yeah, I think next to that, we've got the likes of sprints with Greipel that actually started off quite well at the start of the season, right? He did those multiple stage wins, which I think at the start of the season we were like, that's probably not happening too early, but I was very happy that we saw Greipel do that, and I do want to wish him a very good fortune in the future post-cycling career, and I appreciated everything he did in his career, so I wanted to point that out.
yeah, and listen, I went because I heard rumors, rumblings out of Germany that Greipel was doing the same numbers that he was doing when he was winning Tour de France stages back on the Lotto train with Henderson and co. And I was like, that can't be right. There's no way. And I went and looked, and either his power meter at ISN is overreading and it was underreading at Lotto, but there are sprints where he's doing very good numbers, like 1700 watt peaks, etc. So either sprinting has gone up a level and guys are more aero, and he's not very aerodynamic, or he's always been in terrible position, or he wasn't willing to take certain risks, or their bike is really, really slow and their equipment is really, really slow. It could be a few of all of those things, plus the power meter overreading a bit, maybe. But Benji had another year on his contract, I think, and he retired
Yeah,
early. But we haven't spoken about the elephant in the room, Benji.
yeah,
We've been skirting around this topic. The first year of the Chris Froome project. Now, PCS says he's only got like 1 year left on his deal. They've come out, both Adams and Froome, and said it's a much longer project than that. The first year of this apparently is on 4 to 5 million euro a year. It's easy to forget, Benji, that a year ago, and I went and watched it, this guy was a functional domestique in the Vuelta for Richard Carapaz, and even like setting him up for some attacks on stages. And he's gone to ISN, and it actually couldn't have gone worse. And the excuses or the reasons for his performances both changed from Froome as the year has progressed, be it the leg, be it an illness, etc. And then Adams even says different things recently about it. Like, they can't do this for 3 years, surely, because it's people people's patience has already run out. Even people who are like not as maybe harsh as we are, like no one thinks he's going to be contesting GC at the Tour next year.
yeah, certainly. And a lot of people excuse this transfer then, the amount of money that they throw at Froome with, the marketing exposure that you get from having Froome in the team is significant. Yes, he's certainly a big name, but if he doesn't do anything, you're not going to get much out of that, in my opinion, right? His YouTube channel is his biggest marketing at the moment.
100%. No, Benji, like Catalunya, because I had a lot of his race rides. So Catalunya, I saw how it changed throughout the year. First stage, it was all the B-roll I got sent. All the footage was of Froome at the start of the race, and then all of Froome dropping. Then by the Dauphiné, a little bit less, and it showed him maybe on the stage that Thomas won, dropping on that short climb. But then by the Tour, there's a few interviews, and then he crashed early. I don't remember them showing him at all, because he's not. It's not like, okay, if he's in the GC group of 10 but still loses and comes ninth, you're still relevant. Like, you're still part of the process. Like Rigoberto Urán was relevant in the Tour, even if you don't think he's that good anymore. But Froome is so far from that, and I think that's also a problem for Woods and Dan Martin, because if Froome was good and living up to that salary, then they don't have to send both of those guys to the Tour de France, one would think. So I don't know. It's I just don't see how like they like oh he had some sort of the stomach bug again.
And he went swimming with crocodiles, so they were basically trying to get him eaten by a crocodile.
He's like I have a left right imbalance. I was like okay left right imbalance. Okay, it might be 5 watts or something, but you're missing a full 1.5 watts per kilo over 30 minutes. Like I don't know where that's going to come from.
Yeah.
I think he's at a risk of tarnishing his legacy if they continue this for 2 years. Not, I don't. If they come out and be realistic and say, "Listen, Tour de France GC is not happening. We're going to target something different," and they stop because I originally blamed the media for drumming it up. No, they fuel it with like
Yep.
Sylvan Adams statements. Do you think he's at a risk of tarnishing his legacy, and do you think he might call it a day after this year if he has another year like this?
I think as time progresses past his peak years, it's logical that more and more people are going to be like, oh, he's there again. He's saying that he will try and go for the Tour de France. The team is saying that he will try and go for the Tour de France again. It's not going to happen, stuff like that. And that will that will be escalating and has a snowball effect and getting larger and larger. And as a consequence, I agree that I wouldn't say the word tarnish yet, but it's definitely going to influence it. I think his biggest fans will still be biggest fans, but for like the middle people, it will certainly have an influence. And I would rather see him just go to the Tour of Turkey and do that mountain stage as leader and see if how close he can get there. But then on the other hand, that's the kind of race where Israel should send young climbers to try their stuff. So that kind of coincides with each other. That is against each other. So it's not super easy to say he should go to smaller races and do that because they probably want the exposure of having him at big races. But that's not working if he doesn't have results. So it's just not working.
So Froome doesn't have a top like I don't think he doesn't have a top 20 in any world tour race this year. Came 22nd in the UAE sprint and then the rest is like not even top 50 in any race. Now he did a lot of world tour races and then he did an easier program at the end of the season, but he I don't know what happened, what changed, where his recovery looked slow but okay, and he wasn't back to 2017 Froome after the crash, but he was looking like an okay rider. What happened between the Vuelta 2020 and this year? And if the answer is Israel are not as competent as Ineos and etc., then I don't. That's what's going to change, and so why would he improve? But yeah, I don't know what's happened between then and now, and it's not looking good, and it's a lot of money. But does it matter, Benji, if Froome pays his own salary in a way? If the sponsors come on to pay, if Froome's salary is basically paid for by the additional sponsor money that's guaranteed for Froome's salary, in the same way that a Full Saying or someone brings their own, or Cavendish brought his own salary.
Well, is that the case here? Because we've got Sylvan Adams paying the big bucks here. So he was already paying the big bucks. So is there really a change in that aspect? I don't think if another sponsor comes close, it's likely because Froome's there.
Well, like he's an investor Froome in Factor now or Hammerhead, which supply the team. So it's all sort of
Mm-hmm.
commingled now. But yeah, I don't know. And that's just one to watch. But in terms of their transfers, and by the way, I'll state at the outset, they are at risk of relegation. They are on 9,062 points. This is from, again, Raul Banqueri's data that he's put together on Twitter of the ranking of the UCI teams. So they are 16th on 9,062 points. Cofidis are currently 19th. They're below the relegation zone on 8,300. That's not a large amount, sort of 800 points here or there. That can easily change. So they are at risk of relegation. So that's the context we'll be looking at their transfers in. Out Benji, Norman Vatra, who probably it's all right, but Hugo Hofstetter to Arkea. I think that's a good move for Arkea. I think he's quite good, but he wasn't getting as many opportunities at ISN. You know, he's at top 90 in the UCI ranking. Again, we're going to look at points because he did all the Danny Van Poppel races at the end and just accumulated points. So do you think they'll miss him? And do you think he's better than Einhorn?
I think that that's a good question.
I think he's a bit better.
I think he's indeed a bit better because he's more consistent and also because he's more versatile. I remember him doing well at, did he win Le Samyn at some
Yeah,
point in his life?
and fifth this year
Last
again.
year. So those kind of races do fit him as well, while I haven't seen Einhorn do those semi-cobble 1.1 races and so forth. So I guess that's an extra for Hofstetter in my eyes.
And at Hofstede, sixth at Brugge de Panne, 115 UCI points. A Tour de France stage wins 120. So, he sixth at Alcudia. He is really good at those. He's like the real budget version of Jasper Philipsen. Great pickup for Arkea. And I think
Yeah.
they'll miss him. Chimolai, I don't think was getting the opportunities he wanted. A guy who's won a Paris stage, etc. 32 years old. I remember Dowsett on the podcast, Benji, when he was like, I have to tell Chimolai to wear the Aero helmet. So maybe, I don't know. At the Giro, though, Benji, second, third, fourth, second in the points classification. But then at the end of the Vuelta, they went for Einhorn in the sprints, I think. So he's gone to Cofidis again, another team in the battle for relegation with Israel. Do you think Einhorn is better than Chimolai?
No, as
Okay.
simple as that. Like, I think Chimolai gets more points, and he can gain even more points if he's sent to the right races to get those points. We've spoken a lot about 1.1 races being more proficient at getting teams points than a Tour de France stage. So if you have sprinters like these in just plenty of them, then you can send them to 1.1 races throughout the season in France, because Cofidis will be happy to do so for their sponsorship and so forth, and they will get more out of that than, for example, a Israel who send them to the Giro and the Vuelta, obviously because those are more important races. But yeah, they don't gain as many UCI points as a consequence.
Exactly. Like second in a Giro stage is less than half of coming sixth at Brugge de Panne sprint. So just food for thought. And he went to a lot. He only pretty much exclusively did stage races, Chimolai, throughout the year. So that's why he was good, but didn't pick up a lot of points. And I think I want to also say, Benji, they shouldn't be having this points. We shouldn't even. This is what we should talk about for Intermarché, Arkea, Cofidis, the 10 million euro budget teams. Like, we shouldn't even be talking about points here. We should be talking about who can get on the podium of a Grand Tour. But
Yeah, but
this is where they are.
on the other hand, their entire budget minus Froome is 10 million, right? Roughly? Is it
A little bit
guess?
higher, like maybe
Okay.
13, yeah. But you're
Okay.
right. And that's the problem. Froome is not delivering any points. Dan Martin retired. I understand that they offered him a pretty low offer, which I was surprised by, given that he won at their only Grand Tour stage this year and won a Vuelta stage last year and was good at the Vuelta. I think came fourth on GC there, was still top level climber. And like in the break, and we saw at the Tour in the third week, top climber still. They didn't use him correctly, in my view. He retired instead of taking the low salary. Can't blame him for that. And Greipel retired as well, I think, a year early. So, yeah. And the last one, Benji, Alexis Renard. We mentioned him on the Cofidis
Yeah.
preview. He's actually, again, he's not bad. Third GC
Yeah.
at Tour de Wallonie. He's 22 years old. What are they doing letting him go?
I think that it might just be him getting an offer by a French team as a
True, he's
consequence.
French.
Because
I think he's
that,
good.
yeah, I think he's good as well, but I'm not sure Israel is the right place for a rider like this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's like a GC prospect, maybe like a hilly one day guy. Second at, he did pretty well at some other races. And
Maybe
he's
he
so
liked
young.
Chimolai, I don't know.
Maybe. Anyway, they have a lot of sprinters going out, being Hofstetter, Chimolai, Greipel. I think largely their points will be replaced by a guy that I understand is not on the biggest budget in the world. I was shocked when I heard about it, because he was coming from Quebec and Nextash, which doesn't exist as a World Tour team anymore. Little negotiating leverage. Giacomo Nizzolo, I think this is one of the best signings of this transfer window. He was 21st in the UCI World Ranking, just so many points. And I was calling him Budget Philipsen, because Philipsen did win more races, but he's on about the same points. He took 1,607 points, and for context, 1,607 points is the difference, quick maths, between 13th that would take Cofidis from relegation in 19th above Bike Exchange into mid-pack safety in 14th. And I understand he's not on a huge salary. what do you think about the Nizzolo signing, Benji?
I think it's a great signing. Obviously, he's the sprinter that a lot of teams should have looked for, because I think a lot of teams should want the rider like Nizzolo in their team. He can sprint with a train and without a train, so that's variable, pretty decent at positioning, can get through gaps that are unlikely to get through at certain points. Sometimes gets relegated at the end of a Giro, but that's an old story. But for the rest, I think the majority of his points came from both classics and dot pro one day races. Like Almeria, he got first. He gained points in the likes of Gent-Wevelgem, OxyClean, Dwars door Vlaanderen a bit as well, Scheldeprijs a bit as well. So all these one day races, yes, he does get a lot of decent positions in stage races and sprints as well, but those don't deliver the points. So I think it's a good transfer as long as they realize that they're fighting for relegation and also send them to .pro races and Italian classics like Gran Piemonte. Although I think that Gran Piemonte was changing shape again, so it might become a climbing race again,
Oh,
but I
really?
could be wrong on that sense. I could be very wrong on that sense. And I think, wait a second, isn't Torino changing as well next year, where Milano Torino is now being in front of Milano Sanremo or something
Yeah,
and
it's
being a
earlier in the
sprinter
year.
classic? I don't know, something like that. So those are races that are useful for Nizzolo to go to as well and gain even more points if possible. But even if we don't consider the UCI points, this is a sprinter that is better than Chimolai, Bevan, and so forth in their team, and as a consequence can win a Giro stage.
I think Giacomo Nizzolo is who people were telling Benji Danny Van Poppel is in terms of being a consistent World Tour sprinter. Nizzolo
Yeah.
is a consistent World Tour sprinter who rarely wins at World Tour level. Now, I took a deeper look at his sprints, Benji, and what the reasons were for maybe not winning so much like at UAE. Because I'm really high on him, but then I'm like, okay, how can I be this high on a guy who almost never wins at World Tour level? And largely, I think the reason was his lead out was absolute trash at Quebec. Like I remember UAE Tour. So if you
Yeah.
go look at Champs Elysees sprint with Jonas Rickard and Philipsen, Rickard finishes a little bit early and he brings over Philipsen in the overhead. He brings him over and dumps him on Wout van Aert's wheel, and he just gives him a little bit of a sit on Wout van Aert and pushes Cavendish off. In one of the UAE Tour stages, I think it was Valscheid, he literally brings Nizzolo up the other side of the road, dies, and Nizzolo's sitting in the middle of the road with the other trains on the left in the air and has to just move over and try and take a wheel. I think his leadouts were largely awful. But Gent-Wevelgem, his own positioning cost him, I think, a little bit, although he still came second. But he did get eventually that Giro stage win on stage 13. But I think one of his most impressive wins, which which I'm going to do a full video on, but is the Circuito de Getxo Memorial Hermanos Ochoa. It's a Basque one-day race. This was hilly, really hilly, and he was in a break. Like I'm talking like 2K sort of 9.2% climb near the finish with an uphill finish. He was in a break with Buitrago, Schelling, Ciccone, Aliotti, like all climbers. And he beat these guys after Bora were rolling him with 1-2 attacks in the final. And really, really impressive win. And then he continued that at Worlds, where he was made G1 in that course. And it was domestique for Colbrelli. So my only concern, Benji, is, or two things. Do you think his sort of general classics ability that he showed this year will continue at Israel? And two, what do you think of the lead out train, and who do you think it will be for him next year? I think it has to be an upgrade, even if Israel is kind of just a average lead out train.
I first of all do think that he's got more surrounding in this team in those classic races. Yes, Campenaerts was decent in those classic races, but Van Mark is also in this team, very supportive, and can be the rider that keeps a group together when your boy Nizzolo is in there as well. But that leans more towards races like a Gent-Wevelgem or something, in my eyes. An OxyClean, for example. A Kuurne, Brussel, Kuurne. Van Marke could pace there for a Nizzolo, even though I think Van Marke came like third or fourth around Hausler in that race as well this year. So shout out to Hausler while we can. But Nizzolo, I think, will be decent in those cobble races. I also don't think that the team is super strong in cobble races personally, but I still believe they've got decent support. Yes, that Boivin and Van Asbroek Roubaix Day was outstanding. Boivin even crashed getting ninth in that race, but it's hard believing that they're going to do this every single cobble race. And they didn't in the majority of their cobble races, like in RVV and so forth. I haven't seen Bovin do something crazy there, stuff like that. So I won't expect the glorious victory of Nizzolo in RVV suddenly, because that's too hard for the guy. And then the second question that I completely forgot, so I'm guessing that it was something related to the lead out.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be an upgrade, but I'm also not 100% sure it's the biggest upgrade. Because, like Rick Zabel, I feel like he's a decent lead out, but I don't know. I'm not sure it's going to be the greatest lead out.
Israel's problem seemed to me that they presented a lot of 3 kilometers to go in World Tour races, but then got swamped at the end. I'd hope they could come a little bit later. I think the lead out will be something like Dowsett, Brandler, Van Osbroek, Zabel, which is, yes, it's actually quite a solid lead out. Van Mark can maybe be second last man in certain races. It's an upgrade, certainly, for Nizzolo. And I hope they work on it. Hopefully they're going there. I think they're going to the Challenge Mallorca races in
Yeah.
January. So we'll see this in a month. Hopefully the train setting up in some races for Nizzolo, and then maybe at UA. I hope he goes to the Giro as well. But that's a lot on Giacomo Nizzolo. But again, I think it was a great signing. 2 signings paired together from Astana, Jakob Fulsang and Ugo Ulf from Astana, and was Astana Premier Tech. Premier Tech hasn't signed with Israel yet. Now, we think they're negotiating, and it should happen because I thought Premier Tech was paying Fulsang and Ulf's salary. But Fulsang certainly not his best year and not his sort of 2019 and 2020 uh, form. He's 36 years old now. He didn't win a race this year. He said that the vaccine sort of had an effect on him. Maybe is that what happened, Benji? Am I making that up? Was that someone else?
I think he said that, but I also don't know for 100%. So take it with a grain of salt.
No, he did. He said his Tour de France was wrecked by the COVID vaccine. I think he did. And that can happen. I think he got it like really close to the Tour. Van Avermaet said something similar. He came 12th in Liège, 17th in Flèche, and that's just a big difference, Benji. Like he was always making, expect him to make G1 in Liège, but he didn't make it. And I think, do you think he's on the decline? I just do not expect to see 2019, 2020 Fulsang again, frankly.
Me neither. And even on the vaccine point, I feel like his initial part of the season before the vaccine wasn't that amazing either. So
Yeah.
I don't think that was the biggest influence even in the second part of the season. Because in like, if we look at those hill classics, he should indeed do better than 38 at Amstel, 17 at Flèche, 12 at LBL. That's
100%.
quite simple. He should do better. Yes, he got second in a stage of Tour de Suisse, but let's be real. He needs to do more.
Yeah, and they were playing cat and mouse there.
Yeah, certainly. And yes, his 9th at Strade was pretty good, but I'm expecting more from a Fulsang. I'm expecting at least one victory a year from a Fulsang in some race, and that wasn't the case this year. And I hope he can pull back for the team of Israel themselves, but I'm kind of on the edge, and I feel like the worst part about this transfer is that they signed him for 3 years. I don't get that.
Oh my god, 3 years. He's going to be turning 37 in March. So like Alexis Renard, get the fuck out of here. 22 years old with a bit of upside. They signed Fulsang to 3 years, and to be honest, Benji, he kind of looks. If you go and look at his results, he looks this year exactly like 2018 Fulsang. Even there, he got like second
Yeah.
on a stage in Tour de Suisse and sort of podium in the general classification. A little bit better tour, but still like not even top 10 on GC. And just the solitary win at Romandy, and again missing G1 at Liège, not top 10 at Flèche, a little bit better Amstel. He kind of looks like that guy again. And yeah, I think it's a terrible signing, frankly. Like I just don't see in terms of the salary they're putting out, the riders they could have got. This is the opposite of Nizzolo to me. That being said, what if Benji they send him to a lot of one day sort of hilly races like Emilia?
1.1 classics.
Yeah,
And they won't.
They won't. He'll do a lot of World Tour races. Do you think he's still going to go for top 10 GC?
Top 10 GC, he shouldn't. But I think Premier Tech's more hyped about being linked up with the likes of a Woods at this team than being linked up with Fulsang at this team, I would guess. If they actually continue with the signing or not.
I don't know. I mean, he's also paired with Hugo Uhl, who's on a 3-year deal as well. Now, probably not on as much money. 31-year-old
I hope.
Canadian. I hope. I think he was all right in some of the classics or worlds. I feel like he was okay in some races, but maybe I'm just making that up. He's fine for Cobble Classics.
13 Vintireno.
Right.
16 on Castelfidardo stage, the crazy stage where Van der Poel went haywire.
I think this guy should go to some more one-day races, actually, and not World Tour level. I think Ugo is not bad. The last one is Corbin Strong, incoming transfer from the young Kiwi from Seg Racing Academy. Now, he did the UCI Track Champions League in the off-season, which we've spoken about before in the context of Kel O'Brien. He's a young sprinter. I think he came third in GC on that, or not GC, like the overall points.
Yeah, I think he won the first round, actually,
Yes.
when it comes to the points race.
Kel O'Brien said he's quite light and actually can get over a hill better than one would expect. I think it's not about signing Benji. Do you have any more intel on him or been following him?
Well, mainly I feel like he's a friendly guy, but that doesn't influence his his writing too much, I would guess. I would dare to say that we need to call him the Zebra as a nickname because his shirt in that UCI Track
Oh
Champions
yeah.
League looked exactly like a zebra and it was a bit of an inside joke in the team back then. I believe it's a good signing, but it's very early to say what he's going to be pointing at. 21 years old. I think give it 2 years and we'll know better what area he's going to be good at. But I'm curious if he can lean into the kind of sprinter that can also get over punchy classic type parkours because, for example, Gravel and Tar Classic is a New Zealand classic at the start of the season where half of the roads are unpaved basically, and he gets fifth there. Yes, that's not the most representative race of being able to do that in Strade Bianche 5 years later, but it's a sign that he's not terrible at getting over unpaved roads. So I'm hoping that moves towards the likes of low-key classics kind of thing, and then he can do good at those 1.1 races in Belgium and so forth. That can get you a lot of UCI points.
They also have Tyler Jones, who started. He moved from the Cycling Academy Conti team to World Tour midway through this year and joined the World Tour team. Again, young sprinter, big guy, 21 years old. And it's weird, Benji. They've got like the collection of the Impey, Fulsang, and Froome, who are past the peaks of their careers, over 37 years old, 36 years old. And then they have a collection of Antipodeans, which, like, listen, I'm not complaining. They're one of the teams, the biggest teams picking up Australian and Kiwi talent at the moment. Tar Jones, Corbin Strong, Seb Berwick had his Neo Pro year this year. So I don't mind that at all. It's just there must be someone in the. They also got Patrick Bevan as well, who's a little bit older from New Zealand. But yeah, it's interesting that seems to be the case. It's almost like Trek, Benji. There's someone in Trek who just keeps picking up Danish young guys. They must have a scout or something, or someone on the team.
Yeah.
Sunderland or Sutherland must be pointing it out. Anyway, that's enough on their transfers. Time to pick their teams, Benji, for the main races next year. First, Cobbled Classics, where I think they have a well above average Cobbled Classics team or Classics team. I think it's quite good. I'll throw some names out. Seb Van Mark, Tom Van Asbroek, Giacomo Nizzolo for Omloop, Kerner, and Gent Wevelgem. And then I'd actually give him a rest for RVV and then have Sepp come in. Who else? Bovin and Jente Bermans, maybe? Anyone else that you think should be in the team? Ugo as well, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's a good list so far. I think now we're looking at people to fill up the teams. Wood Schmidt could fill up the team in those cobble races as well. They lost the Hofstetter, for example, who would also do those races usually. I think Hollenstein did those races, but I think the rest of the people that we will select here just won't move the needle. So is it worth talking about the other 3 riders that are going to fill up the team? I think the ones you mentioned already are going to be the ones that can actually do something in those races. I would indeed send the likes of a lead out for Nizzolo as well with Zabel also to that Kuhne and that Gent Wevelgem to fill up those races because that's going to be useful when it comes down to a sprint. What do you think of the position where Daryl Impey could do well at, because I swear if you put him in RV, he could be decent as domestique, but I think Hill Classics is better, right?
Oh, I'd rather have him as a focus on being a domestique for Woods, because Woods is top tier.
Yeah.
So it's just a question of like Impey. Okay, yes, I agree, could do a decent job at those races, but he hasn't done RVV since 2014, and yeah, I think no. But I think it's pretty good. I look at Sepp Van Mark this year again, like as Benji mentioned, third in Omloop, fourth in the Semin, fifth at RVV. He's still really good. The problem is Benji,
His
he
luck.
doesn't go. He doesn't luck, but also he doesn't go to a lot of those stat padding races like the lower. Well, he did at the end of the year, but he seemed to be in poor condition. But yeah, where's him? Where's his smaller races? The smaller Belgian race at the start of the year, like what is it, Bredin and Nogueira Course or something?
Braden and Okra Course is not, that's two races you just combine into one. I think
Yeah,
we've got Nokra Course and we've got
Boxera.
something with Braden, but Braden Coxetti, you're right. Even
Yep,
you know it better than me.
yep.
Specialist on the business, of course. But yeah, I agree that those stat betting races could be good for him. But that's the issue here. These teams are being forced to choose between either we're going to stat pad by sending our big riders to smaller races, or we're going to try and go for sponsor visibility and bigger races with the likes of Van Marke. And I think the balance is the perfect one for Van Marke, the one in the middle. Like try and do some stat padding races, but mainly focus on the big guns like Roubaix, because he still wants to compete for that, and he's gotten close quite a few times. And I hope he gets one decent victory in his career of the level higher than Omloop, but it's currently not looking like it at the moment. But yeah, I think a good part of Van Mark is that he seems like a good domestique, also in the team for other races. And next to that, I feel like he's a good rider to have experience-wise for the team, because he seems always happy to help other riders in the team. So that's a good aspect there, I think.
I forgot Milano Sanremo. We never mentioned Benji. Who is their leader for MSR? Is it Nizzolo or is it Woods? Does Woods do MSR? Like, surely you'd think he'd be able to punch over the Poggio with. He
Why
didn't do
not
it.
both?
True. He didn't do it this
Have
year.
one attack on, well, not attack, he's probably going to follow on the Poggio and see if he can attack or not, because he's going to get bottled in the sprint or in the descent anyway.
Oh, the
But
descent. Yeah, don't. No, he can't do it.
I have in the chat. But Nizzolo, I think I don't think he can follow the G1 group that he gets away. Even on level of Calabon Poggio last year, he's not. So
Yeah.
I don't see it, unless it's like a sprinty finish, which in current years doesn't seem to be the thing anymore.
Yeah, I don't know who's their guy there. Hilly Classics, pretty clear to me. Mike Woods leader. Jakob Fulsang domestique for Mike Woods. Ben Hermans is actually Ben Hermans is still really, really good, by the way.
Yep.
Piccoli, maybe they hope to do it. Nealon's really should be good at those races, frankly.
Yep.
Nealon's as well.
I think he was top 40 at all three of those races domestique-wise. He's strong, I think.
True, that is good. Daryl Impey, Benji already mentioned. Demarchi does some of them, but not. He usually focuses on stage race. But anyway, the key core is Fulsang, Woods, Hermans, Nealons, is in my view, and Daryl Impey, sorry, as well. And then the rest will be maybe some flat
Those are names for
domestiques.
me as well. I don't believe in the fact that Fulsang will domestique for Woods, even though he should. But yeah, I think Woods is very good at these races, but he's got the issue that other people are faster if he lands in a group, and he's very
Yep.
likely to land in a group, so he's unlikely to win one of these. He had a better chance of winning one of these when the finish of LBL was still on top of Côte d'Or or something, instead of this flat finish in Liège. But that's taken away from him, so it's unlikely that he'll win that race. As simple as that. But when it comes to Flesh, I don't know, how close did he get in Flesh in the past? I generally don't remember. I think he podiumed once. I think the competition's too good to beat. Like,
Yeah.
Alaphilippe is better. Even
I don't
Roglic is
think
better.
like he was closer with Hirschi, but that was a slower Murder time. When they're doing the Roglic Alaphilippe time this year, I don't think he can do it. I don't think he can win. But it's one day race. He can come top five, no problem. Or should be able to come top five rather, and he did again this year, and that's 220 UCI points. So he's got to do it.
And
Even if
Italian classics. Perfect
oh
for him.
yeah, he is really, really good at the Italian classics. Like won Milano Torino in 2019, won a stage in Tirreno. I know it's not a one-day race last year. And again, he always top tens. In fact, he should be doing more of them. Like he should be doing Tre Valle Vaticino, which I actually think DeMarchi won this year. So they got a good
Yeah.
Italian classics team. It's one of maybe their best attribute. In fact, Giro Benji. Nizzolo, I'm sending for sprints.
Izzolo for sprints, I agree. I think that's a good choice. I think while he could indeed do well at a cobble race in the Tour de France and be good there, there's just not enough flat sprints, and I think it's better to send Nizzolo to the Giro in general. So him there with a lead out, like you said, the Rigzabel, Brentle, Dowsett of the gang. Von Marke could be in that team, but that's just after, quite a bit after the cobble races. Is he going to be happy to go to the Giro already? Because you don't often see people that go to the cobble races go to the Giro.
I mean, I'm not sending him to Dwars d'Or or Ronde van Vlaanderen, so he gets an extra or shoulder price. So he gets
You're
an
not
extra.
I'm talking about Van Marke.
Sorry, my bad.
So
You would send him to Giro.
no, does he fit in lead out? Because
I wouldn't.
we'd say he would good. I wouldn't send him to the Giro just because he did the cobble races.
I would say Van Marke and for the Tour cobbled stages because he's going to win and take yellow on stage 5.
Because he's so great at prologues.
I think you send maybe like a Brandler, Dowsett, Zabel, maybe Van Asbrook if he's not completely over-raced with Nizzolo to the Giro. Obviously, you have to send DeMarchi. He took pink this year, so he's still really good. What about Fulsang though, Benji? If they're not going to send Woods. Woods shouldn't do Giro. Well, although there's stages that suit him.
Like, they sent him to the Tour de France with time trial last year. Now they have a Grand Tour that doesn't have much time trial, and they wouldn't. In their logic, they're sending Woods to the Giro for GC probably, but I'd rather see him go for stage than take 2 stages.
You're right. I think that's a good point. And then Bevan as well, maybe to Giro. I think Bevan in a break should be pretty solid. Dowsett won from a break with Brandler last year at the Giro. I think the Giro, they should be really trying to pick up some stages here with Nizzolo. And yeah, maybe Benji's right. There's some stages which suit Woods more than at the Tour de France. I think Giro Vuelta suit Woods more. The question is just whether he's a bit tired after the Ardennes campaign. And maybe they send Fulsang to the Tour de France. That's where we'll go next. So Nizzolo's gone to the early Cobble Classics in my calendar. He's gone to the Giro. Maybe he leaves a little bit early. And I'm now also sending Nizzolo to the Tour de France. In my world, Benji, that's what I'm doing. Maybe I shouldn't because then he can't get points. What do you think?
If he does the Tour de France, he can do 1.1 race and Italian Classics at the end of the season instead of the Vuelta. True.
What team do you think they'll send, or what team do you think they should send? Because I'm struggling to pick it out. Apart from Van Mark and Van Asbrook and some Cobbly guys for the start, I'm struggling to pick it here.
So I had Woods at the Giro. I would have Woods at the Vuelta. I would not have Woods at the Tour de France.
Correct.
As a likely consequence, Fulsang would probably get a Tour de France role.
Yeah.
Even though the parcours doesn't exactly fit him, he probably would end up in there. Nonetheless, he had the cobble stage with Nibali a few years ago, so it might be fun to see him do something on that cobble stage, even though it's most likely not likely to happen on this one. Yes, Nizzolo should, in my eyes, do the Giro Tour de France double, even though the Vuelta has more flat sprints. I think there's still that image for Nizzolo to get top 3 sprints at the Tour de France that will be valuable. Even though it would have been so awesome if they just had Einhorn as pure sprinter at the Tour de France on the Champs-Elysees.
No, that's what I think they should do.
Okay.
Seriously, I think you've convinced me. You're biggest promoter. I think there's not many points for Nizzolo to take at the Tour because it's the competition, unless it's like this year, will be extremely high. If there's Jakobsen, okay, now Groeneweggen's going on bike exchange, so now you have another top sprinter, Jakobsen, Ewan, Groenewegen, Bennett. it is going to be almost impossible for Nizzolo to win a stage, let alone come top 3 consistently. That's going to even be a tall ask for the likes of Phillips and Merlier, who might be there taking them. Meanwhile, he could be resting or going to other races where there's not these top sprinters. Instead, you can send Einhorn, get the marketing benefit. Top 10 for him in a Tour de France sprint is that they promote that. It's a big deal for them. And he's like a decent Conti sprinter, and I think he can nab some top 10s. That way, Nizzolo gets a rest. You send Fulsang to do whatever Fulsang does. Ben Hermans, by the way, doesn't do Grand Tours. I think that might even be part of his contract. He just does 1 weeks or one-day races.
I have an off-topic question for you. I want you to look up Dainese's results of 2021, and I will ask you the question. Do you think that Alberto Dainese is a budget Nizzolo based on the results in 2021?
No, because he doesn't have it in the early Cobble Classics. But maybe
right.
he's younger. He's young, so maybe he was a better rider at the end of the year. But no, I think Nizzolo is like a proper step up. Well, no, you said budget, but Nizzolo is just like a lock for like a top 10 at Brugge de Panna, like he just, or even Shoulder Price. So,
yep, okay.
But Dainese, I think he's really, as Benji said, incredibly good value as well. So yes, I do understand and see the comparison, and I think Dainese, don't be surprised if he even wins a Giro stage next year in like the 3rd week of a random sprint. So Tour is a bit weird, and I think the problem again is Benji Froome. I think you send Mads Vert Schmidt because it's starting in Denmark, and is he like? Yeah, that's what I think you should do. Just send some cobble guys, send Mads Vert Schmidt, and send Einhorn, and then
Fulsang with a start in Denmark is also going to go to the Tour. So
true,
yeah,
true, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
We've been discussing this for a bit, but it's pretty obvious that he's going to the Tour like this.
Vuelta is Mike Woods. Try and convince Ben Hermans to do the first week, and then he can go home. Seb Berwick and maybe Corbin Strong. I don't know, because I want to send Nizzolo and just farm points elsewhere for the rest. I'm not sending him to the Vuelta. Nealon should be good at the Vuelta. He should be able to win from the break. DeMarchi as well. Again, should be good at the Vuelta if he can get in the right breaks. So that's what I'm doing, Benji. I'm sending whatever one of the young sprinters has done well, plus Mike Woods and some climbing guys and some break guys. That sound about right?
Yeah, I would also just send someone in that team, like a Goldstein, to the Vuelta to go for GC for one simple reason, because it's so sad to look back at the Vuelta of 2021 and say the first rider finished on 85 in GC. At least you don't have to handle that if you send Goldstein to the Vuelta afterwards. For the shame.
Woods should top 10 the Vuelta, even if he's going.
Oh yeah, you're right. Forgot about Woods, even though it's pretty obvious that he's going there.
I'd send Einhorn again. Einhorn actually was like, unless one of the younger sprinters is better, but he came 5th in the La Manga del Mar Menor sprint. I'd send him. So Lombardia, Woods, Fulsang, pretty obvious as well.
You think we're underrating Impey?
I mean, I think Impey's still pretty good. Like, he came 2nd in Royal Bernard Drôme at the start of the year. That was a hotly contested top pro race against talented guys like Honoré and Baggioli. The question is, I don't know what happened to him. He seemed not right after that crash. Because remember, at Andalusia, he crashed out Stannard. And then he actually had 5 months off. 5 full months.
Was it not something back-related injury, I think?
I don't know. Maybe a silent suspension. But no, I think it was injury-related. And then he DNF'd Bernocchi, Torino, and then not great at Piemonte, and that was it. So, I don't know, Benji. Like, he's still really good. He's 2nd in the Catalonia stage, 2 behind Sagan. It's just, that crash kind of cooked the rest of his season. So, I don't know. What would you do with him? Like, is he... I would send him and DeMarchi to kind of some 1-1 Italian races like Giro del Veneto. I think that's a pretty good combo.
I think he can get stage wins in a Grand Tour if you send him in breakaways. Still, like he's getting third in that first stage of Andalusia. Yes, that's in a bit of an uphill sprint, but send him in the breakaway and he can beat people in an uphill sprint. In the kind of stage where, I don't know, like that stage Wellens won, for example, in where he took it in the final corner by just doing the corner better than Woods in the Vuelta of 2020, something like that. like that kind of stage, Impy can still do that stuff as well, and he's a decent enough climber to get in breakaways and be valuable, I think.
It's only 2 years ago in 2019 he beat what Benji's saying. He beat Tej Benoit in a hilly Tour de France stage in a head-to-head sprint and won a Tour de France stage. So, yeah, like Benji's right. Like maybe Impy if he gets back. Certainly Giro Vuelta stages, people would not be happy being in a break with him, Daryl Impey. So they had 3 World Tour wins this year. It has to be. I've got to set the over under a little bit higher than that. I think for this sort of team, I'm setting the over under at 4.5 World Tour wins.
Oh my god, that's a difficult one.
It's all whether they send Woods to the right races, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think it's gonna be looking at their team. I hope it's more.
I hope it's more.
I'm gonna say under. I think it's gonna be a lot of just not winnings.
Yeah, I don't know. Like Dan Martin's out the door. He won one. The other two were Romandy and Tirreno Adriatico. I don't think Fuglsang's going to win very much. And again, we think that Solo's great signing, but he's not going to win 6 World Tour races. I think it's going to be just under. I think 4 World Tour wins. So yeah, just under, but might be surprised. But do you think they're going to be relegated, Benji?
I don't think they're gonna be relegated.
Me either. I think Nizzolo adds a lot of points. Fuglsang does add some points. I don't think they're going to be relegated, even though they're paying so much that there shouldn't be even a discussion. But I don't think they will be. I think Lotto are in much more trouble than they are. All right, time for some hot takes, Benji. My first one is Chris Froome retires at the end of 2022.
Okay.
I think that is certainly a possibility. And my other hot takes are that Corbin Strong wins a .pro race.
Okay. My first one is Einhorn wins a World Tour race.
Holy shit.
This is my Cavendish wins a World Tour race of last year. Hot take, but with Itamar Einhorn. I believe, like, Tour of Polonia, he got close this year.
True.
Where did he get in Tour of Polonia? He didn't ride it. Okay, my bad. But if he can win a stage at Slovakia
Renard came
ahead
second
of Peter Sagan and KS Bol, then he can win a bloody stage at the Tour de Polonia, okay?
Yeah,
unless
maybe.
they send Olaf Koy again at Jumbo. Or Bauhaus does them again. But I believe Itamar Einhorn will win a World Tour race. It would be cool if it's a Vuelta. Let me just drop that in just in case it happens. But when it comes to my other hot takes, I don't think Fuglsang will win a race.
Yeah, Fuglsang not winning a race. Probably, certainly not. I don't think he wins a World Tour race. But yeah, let's both say he's not winning a race. I think Chris Neerlands, like, he's actually really quite good, but he just had a really...
He's like his
really
fellow
odd
Latvian, Squins.
Yeah. Like, he should be able to win with his profile. He should be really good in hilly breaks at the Giro or Vuelta. He's never done the Vuelta. He's 27. I would send Neelands to the Vuelta. But I'm trying to think of any other hot takes, Benny. I think Seb Van Marke wins a monument.
Okay.
Either Roubaix. I think he wins either Roubaix.
I don't believe
RDP.
it. I don't believe in that because even like the cycling gods have proven already that if Van Marke is heading towards the monument victory, he's going to puncture in the last 20 meters. It's happening, which is unfortunate, but that's the fact.
Israel are winning Roubaix. I think they've got a really good team for it. Israel are going to win Roubaix and take yellow and take a Tour de France stage win, and somehow with all these hot takes still win under 5 World Tour races. I don't know how that's going to be. Both those things are going to be correct, but I'm not here to be a mathematician. But yeah, that's largely our ISN preview. It's a strange team. It's an odd team, the way they're constructed. I think they'll be fighting a battle on many fronts, which is first, they have to keep sponsors happy, and they have the large salaries going to Fuglsang and Froome. And they will want exposure at large races, or the biggest races like the Tour de France. But in the background, they have the battle for survival, where they need to be farming points at not the largest races. And the best way to do that is to send overpowered squads to those races, like a Piemonte if it's flat, with a full train for Nizzolo. So it'll be a really delicate balancing act for them. I think Benji and I have pretty well set out how the season should go for them, with especially how to use Nizzolo properly. But yeah, any last thoughts on ISN, Benji?
I don't know. Not really.
I just think it's a shame, because it's a lot of salary going to guys not performing, and then they need the other guys to pick up the slack.
Yeah, just imagine how much money 5 million would be if it was given to a development team
I know, yeah.
instead of sending it to Froome.
That's like 2.5 women's world tour teams.
Exactly.
Anyway, we'll see what happens with them. I've already said my piece about what will happen with Froome in 2022, but I'll hopefully the young, from a personal perspective, I'll be tracking the team closely to see how Taj Jones, Corbin Strong, and Seb Berwick go, and even Paddy Bevan, who was strong in Basque Country in parts, but I think he still can get results as well. That was our Israel Startup Nation preview for 2022. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to give us a review or a rating on podcast players, or like the video down below. Let us know your hot takes, and we'll see you in the next one. Ciao.